We turn our attention now to Saturday's races on the 149th Preakness undercard, starting with the Maryland Sprint. It'll be race number 8, 6 furlongs here. This is the race where Artax famously ran into a fan on the racetrack back in 1999. Best known for a bad time for sure, but this year's Maryland Sprint's got a real good local flavor about it, Jeff, with, regional horses like Coastal Mission, Prince of Jericho. This is a good sprint race, but some national names as well, like Prevalence.
Good race, and Coastal Mission and Prince of Jericho just ran in the Whiteley, and we can look at the replay and still not know for sure who really won that race. Head bobber. I thought both ran well enough to expect that they will run well here. Okay, It was a good, solid race. In fact, career top numbers for both horses, a triple-digit 100 Beyer number, tells me it was a good race. They've had enough time to get over that if it kind of knocked them out a little bit, which I don't think it did. In trying to differentiate between the two, Coastal Mission is on the inside, Prince of Jericho on the outside, and that gives the Prince of Jericho a little bit of an edge. Coastal Mission is dropping 2 pounds off that race that they ran heads apart, noses apart in the Whiteley. Prince of Jericho is dropping 6. I don't know how much that means, but it's something, So I think those two will probably go eyeball to eyeball somewhere along the way. Right. Again, maybe not until the furlong pole, because I do believe that Prince of Jericho's got a little bit more early speed, tactical speed. Then you have another horse in here that I want your opinion about, if you can, and that's Super Chow, who's got excellent form and good numbers. Third in the Carter last time out, when he had a real distinct edge in pace, and the jock just grabbed him and choked him down 24-48. Didn't do Super Chow any good. So George Delgado makes a jockey change to No Rider, who hopefully No Rider will let him run. Yeah. But Super Chow also usually makes a right-hand turn at the 8th ball. You never know what direction he's going in. This is a challenging race. Then toss in the mud and a possibility of. Right. So I ended up going with Prince of Jericho. I think he'll like it. He had one poor run on an off track, but this might be the most difficult, challenging race of the day for me, because I could see any kind of possibilities from a number of these horses, including Prevalence. So I don't know. If you've got an opinion, speak up or forever hold your peace, because I really don't.
Well, I like the fact that Prevalence has a race in this particular event on Preakness Day on the undercard last year, finished a distant second in there when Straight No Chaser ran off the screen. Right. Prince of Jericho's also run on this undercard in the Chick Lang and has run well here over the track at Pimlico. So those two might have the edge over Coastal Mission, the Charlestown-based horse who did carry his form to Laurel, but he's never run at Pimlico. So that's a question that you're going to have in separating those two. And like you said, Coastal Mission to the inside this time, Prince of Jericho to the outside. It was flipped around last time, so maybe the edge goes to Prince of Jericho this time in the rematch. I don't disagree with you on Prince of Jericho, and I think Prevalence is the other horse in here. For me, it's one of those two, and those are the two I'm going to lean on, but I have a lot of respect for Jeff Runco, the Charlestown former jockey and longtime trainer. When he has a good horse like this, he's willing to go to Aqueduct, he's willing to come to Maryland with them and leave Charlestown. Coastal Mission fits in the region, and he fits in this particular spot. If you go back and listen to Dave Rodman's call and watch the race from the Frank Whiteley, you'll see these two horses really got after it.
Pierce, 24 Mamba. Prince of Jericho almost head-to-head for the lead at the top of the lane. Getting away from Swift Shears back in third as they reach for home in Coastal Mission. Coastal Mission in between horses is next, and Brilliant Ice on the outside. Half mile was in 45-2, and now they're into the strong west wind. And Prince of Jericho outside here is Coastal Mission. Coastal Mission outside Prince of Jericho in a head-to-head battle royale down to the last 60th of a mile. Inside Prince of Jericho. Very game. Prince of Jericho just a nose in front. Coastal Mission. Photo. Too close to call. Coastal Mission, Prince of Jericho, noses apart.
Dave Rodman with the call there. I can't wait to hear Dave's calls over the next couple days and get his just due as one of the great voices in the game. Be remiss if we didn't mention Jackson Traveler in this race. It's Preakness weekend. He seems to show up almost every year at Pimlico. Great local record. He's coming off a race against Skelly in the Count Fleet that, you know, was not like him. I mean, his other races prior to that, he was right there in the Whitmore. He traveled to Sunland Park successfully. Steve Asmussen on the undercard Preakness weekends has been like that trainer in any kind of points bonus standings. I mean, he's bringing the barn usually Preakness weekend. And Jackson Traveler is a solid horse, and he'll bounce back, I think, off that last race. He's had some poor efforts in the past and came back and run from them. This is a good competitive field, and if you're looking to get beyond maybe the first favorite or two in the race, Jackson Traveler's got a real shot.
And not only that, but he's won first or second 5 out of 6 times at races at Pimlico, so he's a horse for course. Getting back to Coastal Mission, I would tend to want to try to beat him, but then I noticed that he's won 6 races from 8 starts over a wet track. So if it rains and it's wet, how do you throw him out? So anyway, it's a tough race. Look, I have opinions on some of the others. I can afford to spread at least one race, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think we mentioned it. We've talked about the threat of rain, but the actual forecast I saw right before recording this podcast on Thursday, late morning, early afternoon, was 80% chance of rain on Saturday, a quarter inch. So it's not like they're calling for Noah's Ark, but will it be enough to affect the conditions? That's what we're all just going to kind of hold our breath and wait and see. Friday's racing looks to be absolutely pristine in terms of the weather in the Baltimore area. So let's go back to the schedule as we move from the Maryland Sprint to the Jimmy Murphy. These are 3-year-olds on the turf. The best named horse in the entire crop, Lucky Jeremy, starts us off on the rail. If he wins on Preakness Day, I'll be a happy guy. Jeff, he tries turf for the first time. Mike Maker, the new trainer of Lucky Jeremy, a barn move there from Bill Morey. So Maker seems to move horses up a lot and moving them to the turf. So we'll see if that one, a horse who was third in the Sunland Derby, might be able to get a little fun share for me in there. But from a handicapping standpoint, he's not at the top of the list in this particular spot. Who do you like in the Jimmy Murphy?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a positive. Lucky Jeremy, you mentioned first time on grass by looking at Lucky, a son of Smart Strike, so there's enough grass bleeding there. But out of a mare by War Chant. So you never know about a horse like this. He may love it. He may just like it, but he might be worth throwing in at 10-1 from the rail, especially if he can get a trip on the front end. Now, there is other speed in the race that might pressure him a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do with speediness, but he's not waiting around for anybody. But
no, he's not.
And there's others in here as well. But the one that I came up with was Abrumar, even though he looks like he's another speed horse. But I'm convinced that this is a colt that it might be most effective if held up early. And I think that was the thinking that Safi Joseph had and switching to Irad Ortiz, because Paco rode him his last 2 races and they put him on the lead 2 races back and they crawled. He just happened to, inherit the lead. So to me, I think that that's not necessarily the way he wanted to run. But what happened in the American Turf is he had the outside, the 14-hole or 11-hole, and he broke running, and then he got grabbed. He was 5 wide into the first turn, 5 wide into the backstretch, never got it covered, never got close to the rail, was still right in there inside the 8th hole. Now with the switch to Irad and with pace in the race, I'm going to see this horse take back, get some cover, and blast home. And he can quicken. I mean, I know that getting on the lead like he did at Gulfstream and the Colonel Liam maybe flattered him. But, boy, if you ask him to quicken, he's got to move. And I just hope this horse gets the kind of ride I'm hoping he gets. He's 5-1 in the morning line. That's a gambling number for me. So we'll see what happens with Abrumar. And I think he's got a chance to beat this field.
His 3 wins are by 2 combined lengths. He wants to beat you in a tough fight. He's one of those horses who wants to stick his neck out. Let's go back and look at that Colonel Liam victory. 2 starts back for Abrumar.
Now the pace quickens with Abrumar just ahead in front. 3 wide. Cugino's going to force Silent Heart to go. At the inside, it's Rapture Bay, who's now 4th. Triple Espresso wide and needs to do a bit better than that as they run to the top of the stretch. From between horses, it's Silent Heart. Down at the inside, Abrumar. Cugino with every opportunity down the stand side. There's an 1/8 of a mile to go. Abrumar digging in gamely for Paco. Cugino and Silent Heart right alongside. Almost 3 in line as they drive for the wire. It's Abrumar who would not be denied.
Another one to watch in this race, I think, is Twirling Point. Well-traveled, Jonathan Thomas, Augustin Stables. Love the pedigree here by Twirling Candy, but the mare Kitten's Point, she was a Grand Motion trainee. Just loved her as a race mare. And this one's versatile, just like Kitten's Point was. Synthetic, turf, took the game anywhere that she ran. Twirling Point's been to the West Coast, been to Kentucky Downs, been to Turfway, been to Woodbine. This horse showing up with Frankie Dettori aboard and drawn really well. We'll break from the 3-hole probably here if we stay on the turf. So Twirling Point, I think, very interesting. Now, if this race does come off the turf, then those locals like Speediness entered in this race, probably looking and hoping that the race would come off the turf. And the same thing with Copper Tax, who's entered just main track only. Copper Tax was thought to be a Preakness possibility after he won the automatic berth and qualifier in winning the Federico Tessio over Speediness. So if this race comes to the main track, things change up quite a bit. But on the turf, I'll give Twirling Point a shot in here, Jeff, to have a shot. And again, if this race came off the turf, Lucky Jeremy and the pedigree says, yes, maybe we'll like the turf. But certainly if it's a wet track and inside speed, this horse wouldn't mind the Murphy coming off the grass either.
I don't know the rules back at Pimlico. I know that they are in California, but if you enter main track only, you have to enter main track only, as Copper Tax did.
Right.
And he's not going to run if it stays on grass. But I don't think it's necessary because it's a stakes and you don't need a reason to get out of a stake.
Right.
So why commit yourself to main track only when you can still get out if you want? Who knows? Yeah. But the thing about Twirling Point that because I know him out here in California, I thought he was a decent horse, not great or anything. But what I liked about him is that both of his wins were wire to wire, gate to wire, which means the first impression is probably needs the lead. But then in the rush away on the all weather, he rallied from 10th. He could beat only a half length. So who knows? Maybe he wants to be taken back. And again, in a race with plenty of pace in it, I could see Frankie just kind of drop in and get covered and make a run. Yeah. I would throw him in. He certainly would be on my ticket somewhere for sure, even though I still do like Irad's horse, Abrumar, Safi's horse, but as a backup or a second B horse, Twirling Point's got to be used somewhere.
Let's move to the Sir Barton. We stay with the 3-year-olds. This one on the main track. Next up, it's race number 10 on the card. 100 Grander, mile and a 16th. Most famously, the race where Sarava came out of here and went on to win the Belmont Stakes in that major upset back in 2002. Sir Barton, the mile and a 16th undercard consolation, if you will, for the Preakness horses. Not quite up to the Preakness level. We thought Imperial Gun in here for Steve Asmussen after running a good second in the Bathhouse Row might be a horse along with Informed Patriot for Asmussen, who may move on to the Preakness, but he wisely, I think, found a little softer competition here with Imperial Gun. Unfortunately, he drew the outside post with Imperial Gun in a field of 10. They are widest of all in post number 10. How do you see this one shaking out, Jeff?
Well, this is another race that does not look like it has a lot of pace in it. So I want a horse with tactical speed. So the first horse I looked at, and I was surprised that he wasn't favored, although now I understand why he isn't, is Tuscan Sky, because he did show some speed, but both races were on off track. That's a good news, bad news thing. Maybe he needs an off track to run well, but maybe he'll get it.
Yeah.
Then I went back. I said, well, he was 5-2 in the Wood Memorial. He didn't look like he ran all that well. I went back and watched the tape of the race. He was awful that day. I mean, he didn't do anything. He didn't show speed. He didn't close. He just kind of ran up and down. Todd's putting blinkers on him. Maybe he's just experimenting, and maybe he is hoping for rain. So I don't know what to make of Tuscan Sky, other than my initial impression is if it's not done off track, then he's really not all that much. Now, let's jump ahead to Corporate Power. Again, we talked about Curlin, so automatically he's the top of my list for various reasons, not the least of which is your statistic about how good Curlin's run at Pimlico. But this is a colt that is improving. His numbers are going in the right direction. Got beat in the slop last time out by a colt that came out of that race and ran a pretty decent race in the Peter Pan, made the running that day unique insight. So that was a decent race. And now he puts blinkers on, and he's a Curlin. He's supposed to wake up and get better and better and better with experience and age and maturity and distance. And I mean, this is the kind of colt that if he were to show up and run well in this race, maybe win it with authority, why wouldn't he come back in the Belmont? I mean, that's what he's supposed to be like. $925,000 yearling. And, the last race was in the slop, but the race before that at Gulfstream was good. And I think he's got upside that some of the others don't have.
Let's see that win by Corporate Power. It's not going to like visually blow you away, but the competition in there was good. Sturdy came back and ran well. Batten Down is the son of Close Hatches for Bill Mott, who came back, ran well at Keeneland, and then won next time out impressively. So this was a pretty good maiden race that Corporate Power came out of, and he showed some guts in that one.
Top of the stretch, the 3 favorites almost in line, with Corporate Power trying to catch Batten Down. Roughshod's the one working harder between and not gaining. Underway from the back is Sturdy. 3/4, 112 and 3, and Batten Down traveling very well for Paco. Off the turn, 2 on top. Here comes Sturdy to try to go get him from second. Corporate Power not finding much under pressure. 1/8 of a mile to go. Batten Down's now struggling to hold on. Down the center, it's Sturdy who's lifting late. Corporate Power between horses is emboldened by the challenge. They come for the wire. Corporate Power's in between.
Jeff and I are in agreement. We're both taking Corporate Power to win the Sir Barton Stakes, with perhaps an eye towards the Belmont on the other end of a successful run. Let's go next on the program to race number 11 on Saturday. It's the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. 5 furlongs on the grass here, $100,000. You can't think of this race without thinking of the great Ben's Cat. I mean, he just like, I don't know, he had to pay taxes as a resident of the Jim McKay Turf Sprint as many times as he ran in this race over the years, and took up residence in the winner's circle in this race. And of course, the Jim McKay Turf Sprint, named for the founder of the Maryland Million. You know him more as the host of ABC's Wide World of Sports for so many decades, and really the face of broadcasting for a large portion of his career, Jim McManus. He wasn't a Maryland native, but he lived there for nearly all of his adult life and was a major influence on racing in Maryland. Again, after visiting the Breeders' Cup for the first time in 1984, he says, why can't we do this in Maryland with statebreds? And that became, a year or two later, the very first program in the country for the statebred championship days that so many other states now emulate. But Jim McKay was the pioneer of that and one of the great broadcasters of all time. The race in his name, the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. I would just say take Ben's Cat, Jeff, but we got to do more work than that. He's not with us anymore.
Yeah, I know for sure. Well, again, a very challenging race. Number of these horses are capable of winning on their best day. Toss in the possibility of some wet turf or softer turf. I think it'll probably be in pretty good shape. I was looking at this race, and Whitty, who's always been a real pro, first or second, 15 out of 21 starts, late running sprinter deluxe, and winner of 4 out of his last 5 starts, and second in the previous 4 before his that first win in the streak. How genuine and consistent can you get more than Whitty? And yet, the one race he didn't run all that well in was when he finished 5th, beaten 5 lengths at Aqueduct in the Turf Sprint Championship, a race in which they ran 107-1 on turf. And the reason why I bring this up is because I like Whitty, but then Boats Are Rockin' was actually second in that race and finished 4 or 5 lengths in front of Whitty. Now, we haven't seen Boats Are Rockin' since that race. He was 44-1. In that race. He paired up his 94 buyer number that he had won at Laurel, earned at Laurel in an allowance win. Now he's off since November for a barn that does not have a great record with comebacking horses, and a horse who was 6-5 in a comebacking race and got beat. So I don't know, mixed signals here. If you go by Boats Are Rockin's numbers, and if you go by his last 2 races, he's an absolute major contender. Not only that, but he's won 11 out of 28 races. And yet, I don't know whether he's totally cranked up. Maybe they're looking ahead towards races in the summer. What a challenging races. I picked Boats Are Rockin' on top, but there are several in these that I'm going to use. I mean, Whitty's got a chance on his best day. I would really like Beer Can Man if he wasn't stuck in the outside 12-0 going 5-8. This is one of these races that a 14-1's gonna win it, and I don't know which one of those gonna win. So it's a spread race for me, unless you can talk me into one or 2 of these.
Well, I think when you're looking at horses like Whitty, I mean, he's probably the horse to beat in here, but his style is so doggedly slow at the beginning, and it's all about the finish for him. If you're going to beat him, it's not going to be with a mid-packer or a closer. If the race sets up for a closer, he's probably going to get it. Look at his record. So if you're looking to beat Whitty in this particular spot, and it's always a good chance to beat a horse who's coming from so far out of it, I think you want to try to find speed, and figure one of the speed horses in front from the beginning or right up on the pace can hold on. So, I would be looking towards some speed in here. The one Grooms All Business is a horse who kind of interests me in here. First start since August of last year. Now, this has been a while, but I'm dating myself a little bit, in the 20, 30 years playing Preakness Day. But Colts Neck Stable out of New Jersey used to have Alan Goldberg as their trainer, of course, Jorge Duarte now. And they haven't had a lot of success on Preakness Day in recent years. But once upon a time, this outfit would bring horses just like this. Laid off, haven't run all year, back on the turf Preakness weekend, and pop. Ready to go. I would not be surprised if Grooms All Business, who has a little bit of tactical speed. The Monmouth Turf Sprinters are underrated nationally. It's a very good turf sprint program there at Monmouth. I think Grooms All Business might be all right in this particular spot. Got to get out of the gate. Carol Terry right next to him's got speed for Brian Lynch, so you're going to have to get out of there. But give Grooms All Business a little bit of a shot in here. I'm not wild about the rail when you got that speed right next to you, but the 3, the 4, the 5 aren't that fast. So 6 isn't that fast early on. So maybe the 1 and 2 can kind of both get out there and carve out a little bit of space and not be, claustrophobic down to the fence. But I'm looking for speed in this race. Give me the 1 and the 2 in here, and we'll try to take one of those inside speeds, and hopefully Whitty, either being wide or too far back, kind of gives us the head start, and we can give them the slip.
A couple of things there. I certainly would throw in Grooms All Business at 8-1, but Cara Terry, hard to get past 2 for 2 lifetime over the Pimlico turf course. And he's going to get a good trip, and he's hard to get by 10 wins from 37 starts. He knows where the wire is. I'm not going to get beat in this race with a 12-1 shot like Cara Terry. I'm going to throw him in. But Boats Are Rockin', the horse I mentioned, he's one of these horses that can actually sit behind the leaders, but not far back. He's right in the fray, but doesn't need the lead. It's just a matter of whether he's cranked up and ready, and I don't know that. So again, I'm going to use him, but without anything definitive, I just don't know whether I trust him enough to put all my eggs in his basket.
All right, let's go to the 12th race on the card. It's the Dinner Party Stakes. This race, formerly named the Dixie, changed the name to Dinner Party a few years ago, but it's the race leading up to the Preakness throughout most of its history. It was moved earlier on the program last year, but this year they kind of gave it an injection, a new lease on life, a purse boost. It's part of a program of races between here and Santa Anita and Gulfstream Park with a bonus structure now set up, and it paid off. They got the best field they've had in this race in decades. I mean, we talk about the old editions of the Dixie, and you're thinking of some Bill Mott greats and some big showdowns, leading up to the Preakness Stakes. Well, we're kind of back in that area. You've got Grade 1 winner Highland Chief. You've got a Grade 1 winner in here, also in Adahamo. You got a Grade 1 winner in Atone. 3 Grade 1 winners showing up in a Grade 3. You got a couple horses who are Grade 2 winners like Emmanuel. Emmanuel almost won this race last year, 3rd beat and a half a length. This is a good field, Jeff. This isn't the absolute top cusp of the turf division in America, but it's not that far off of it. And for a Grade 3, this looks a lot more like a $500,000 race than a Grade 3. So it's good to see the Dinner Party kind of getting back to its old groove with this year's lineup.
Well, this would be a $500,000 race if they ran it at Dueling Grounds or Kentucky. But I will say this. This is a really good gambling race for me. I really think there's only 3 in here that I have to worry about. Running B is my top selection because he's still lightly raced. He's still potential. He's only had 9 starts with 4 wins. He's 5 years of age. He came off a little bit of a breather. I thought won at Keeneland, an allowance race, a confidence-building win with authority. You're in a good, strong speed figure. Got, again, practical speed. I think Running B is going to run great here. Then you've got Emmanuel, who's got proven form in graded company. You mentioned how well he ran in this race last year, beating only a half length. He's coming out of a race, quite frankly, that he just wasn't good enough to compete in. I mean, that was a monster race, the Maker's Mile. You run against Master of the Seas, you're asking for it. But he'd run well in the Canadian turf at Gulfstream prior to that. He's got enough tactical speed to be right in the fray. If the pace is slow, he's going to be right there. And then Beatbox. I know you like him, and he's hard not to like because He's another one of these horses who knows how to win races, and he can really kick it in. And if Joel Rosario can get him, within range, midway on the far turn from the quarter pole home, he's going to outkick anybody. So, I mean, those are the three. I mean, now it's just a matter of who shows up with their best race, who gets a favorable race flow, and who gets a good trip. I'm taking 9-2 at running B, but I'm playing rolling exotics using all three.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I don't know. You can't read my paper probably, but I've got 9-10-5 right up there at the top, right? I mean, we're in the same, category in this. I think there's a solid pace in this race. I think that late running style of beatbox might really fit well here. It's Rosario on a closer. I'm kind of drawn to that like a magnet to start with. But I have the DRF PPs here. I also got the Brisk back here somewhere that I printed out because I love late pace figures, and I like the Brisk late pace figures for a race like this. Beatbox has some of the most impressive Brisk late pace figures of any horse in training. He is phenomenal on the back end of his races, and I expect that he's going to run really well in here and get a great pace setup. Now, that last race, the Mervyn Muniz Memorial, the horse is like, I'm very busy, a web slinger. They came back with some mixed results in the Kentucky Derby lead-in race. We saw the Turf Classic run 2 weeks ago at Churchill Downs, but that was a tougher spot than this particular one. So I don't know if we necessarily say that was a negative key race coming out of it, because Web Slinger did run well.
I wouldn't say that at all, Jeremy. A couple things. I'm very busy. Was badly victimized at Churchill by a lack of pace on a very, very wide trip. I would not hold that against him. And the same thing about Beatbox in the Munis. He was fourth that day, beaten 5 lengths. He never even came close to the rail. He was wide every step of the way and never got any cover. And he still tried to make this move at the quarter pole that, when a horse gets that kind of trip, it kind of never works, And I don't hold that against him. I thought he actually, not only did I thought he ran as well as he did when he in the same kind of races he had run when he won the previous grade 3, but he actually got the same buyer number. That doesn't factor in ground loss or trip. So he actually ran really well in his last race, much better than that line will show. And now Rosario, who probably was aware that he kind of messed it up, is going to be really thinking about getting some cover and make one run, not one extended run in the 5-path.
We know about Emmanuel. We know about Beatbox. Let's get a look at your horse coming out of that allowance race at Keeneland, running B, stepping up in class, because fans and I might not be as familiar with him, but this was a really good effort at Keeneland.
Now let's see from here what Running B can do. Still has to get Dominican Pioneer. Running B comes off the rail now. Injunction, Ocean Atlantique far outside, a credit between horses. Still Dominican Pioneer with the lead, and Dominican Pioneer chased by Masterpiece, who's coming late up the rail, and Running B, who's there from the outside. Running B again comes after Dominican Pioneer. Running B, yes, finally.
And not much pace help there. You saw the slower fractions and still able to reel in the leader. That's a good sign. 9-10-5. Jeff and I are on the same 3 horses. That's a great promo for the Exactathon. This could be one of those where you need to hit 6 exactas in order to get your share of $20,000 or $25,000 on Saturday. Use the combinations 9-10-5 in the Dixie, and Jeff and I feel pretty darn good about you getting through that race with one of your Exacta plays. So good luck playing the Exactathon again Friday and Saturday. Win your share of up to $50,000. Free money. I mean, you get your pari-mutuel winnings. This isn't a contest. This isn't a gimmick. You get your winnings, whatever an Exacta pays, and all your account balance. You just get paid if you have a lot of Exacta winners, and you can play as many as you want in a race. It's not like you got one shot to play an Exacta. If you win an Exacta in 6 of the 14 races, no matter how many combinations you play, you're in there for those splits. And typically the Exactathon splits have been anywhere from $300 to $600, $800, $1,000. We've seen some weeks when there have been some crazy results. So be sure to take part in the Exactathon. Opt into the promos. That's going to bring us to Preakness number 149 in our final handicapping destination this weekend on the First Call podcast. Preakness Stakes started out with a field of 9. We are down to 8 after the scratch of Muth. Of course, that news broke on Wednesday. His flight overnight Tuesday into Wednesday reportedly had a fever of 103 and was scratched on Wednesday. So we've got 8 in the field as we record our podcast. broadcast here on Thursday around noon. So, Jeff Siegel, let's take a look at the field with Mystic Dan now. You've got to expect him somewhere in the 7-5 area, perhaps. That's what I'm guessing in terms of odds. That was the price on Mage, last year's Kentucky Derby long shot winner, when he came to a Preakness and took on a field that didn't have any other heavy hitters. And you look at the field in this year's Preakness, there's not a big name heavy hitter to take the money away from Mystic Dan, I don't think. I think he goes somewhere around 7-5.
And yet, in looking at our Preakness wagering guide, 20 outstanding handicappers made 1, 2, 3, 4 picks, part of our family at ExpressBet. 20 of them. You know how many picked Mystic Dan?
I put it together, so I know.
2. Me and Bailey. Bailey and I. That was it. Everybody's jumping ship here. So that gives me hope that maybe he will be higher than 7-5. I understand that these were last minute selections. A lot of people, the majority, I think, originally picked Muth, right?
Yeah.
So with him out, and I think people were like me. I said I wasn't going to pick Mystic Dan. I mean, with Muth in there, there's just no way. So then I had to re-handicap the race. And what I did, as I went back and watched the Derby again, just zeroing in on Mystic Dan, which I'd done before, but I really watched him race. I watched the early position. I watched the gallop out. I watched the hole that he got through. I watched the fact that he was stymied from the 3/8 pole, the quarter pole, with nowhere to go, even though he was saving ground. I mean, I thought I have a little bit more respect for him than I did before, and he earned a triple-digit 100 buyer number. It wasn't like it was a bad race. They're telling me he looks great. I mean, we see the video here of him jogging this week. He looks like a horse who is taking the race in stride and is not knocked out. That's what we hear. And the fact that with no speed among the 3 horses that are drawn inside of him, the post position is going to allow Mystic Dan to draft in and get a good stalking trip, saving ground. He doesn't have to be in front. I don't know, Jeremy. I think maybe I sold him short, which is why I'm picking him. I'm not saying he's a great gamble at 7-5, but I am saying that if I had to pick one to win it, he'd be the one.
He has a great post in here because we were talking about the exact same thing with Muth, because the 3 closers in this race are Magatu, Uncle Heavy, and Catching Freedom. They're the 1, 2, 3. Muth was going to get that, okay, I can break semi-decent and clear those 3 and go right over to the rail and get a wonderful trip. With Muth out of there, Mystic Dan slides in a spot, and he's in that exact position. And this horse has shown speed in the past. It's just the last few races where he's had success from off the pace. Now becomes the $2 million question with the purse of the Preakness Stakes. Do you play the scenario or do you play the style, right? Because the scenario says you break this time, clear those 3, go over, and kind of get up into this race right away. Maybe not in front of Imagination, but with Imagination to the far outside, maybe the lead is just there for the taking. And when you have the best horse in a race and who has shown some speed in the past, do you just go? Or do you change what's been working, which has been to kind of sit mid-flight, rally up the inside, and come after him? Brian Hernandez Jr.'s got the task, and he was up to it at Churchill Downs and doing everything right. This is an interesting one because he's got some options here, and it'll be curious to see which way they play it. I could see him on the lead. I could also see him coming from 4th or 5th.
Well, either way, I mean, he's done it both. I mean, but
yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to mention about rewatching the Derby is that Mystic Dan was right in the fray. He was just 2 lengths off the pace. And the finish, Mystic Dan was stuck around. All the other horses that were up front, including Fierceness, they just waved the white flag and backed out of it. And this horse went on. He's the one of the few horses that was close, well, the only one that still had a second move, and he had to do it despite scraping pain into the stretch. So I thought, based on the fact that he was the only real speed horse or close to the pace horse that stuck around, where everybody else were virtually eased, I thought that, again, was a very good race for Mystic Dan, the best race of his life. And the number was strong, so it wasn't like it was an optical illusion. Now I want to talk about Imagination, because I think he's going to be on the leader close to it. I know this horse. I've seen every one of his races. The only thing about, and he's training well. This is Muth, who's inside him. He stayed right with him. Muth was going the easier of the 2. But if I thought Muth was going to win the the Preakness, and now he's out. I mean, I can't really neg imagination for not being quite as good as the Workmate, because the Workmate probably would have won this race. So that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have with imagination is I saw him get beat at 30 cents on the dollar when he got out finished. I saw him get beat at 5-2 when he got out finished in an allowance race. I saw him get beat at even money in the San Diego Derby when he got out finished. I don't think he's that brave. Now, I'm not asking him to win. I'm just asking him to run second in my exacta.
Right.
But I don't know whether he's the kind of horse that I expect to lay his body down and win at a tough race, as Mystic Dan has already done. So that's the difference between those two for me. Now, I know you like Tuscan Gold, and I'm going to give you a chance to sing his praises, because you've talked me into him. I thought he was third best, but now I respect him, and I know you like him, and you've liked him for a while, so I'm throwing him in for sure.
Yeah, I liked him for a while. I wish he would have run a little bit better in the Louisiana Derby. He was kind of wide in a race that didn't kind of set up for him, but I thought he would make that step forward off the really impressive win against good company at Gulfstream in his second start. He's fresh. He's been pointed to this race since the Louisiana Derby. He's got dead aim on it. He's a grandson of Curlin. We talk about that here on the track at Keeneland. And I think, and he's by Medaglia d'Oro, of course, who sired Rachel Alexandra, a Preakness winner. So there's plenty of Preakness pedigree for him, and it's Chad Brown who's won this race twice since 2017 with new shooters. Last year, he almost won a third one with Blazing Sevens, who nobody thought was really a top-notch 3-year-old last year, and he went right to the wire in the Preakness Stakes with a fresh horse. So I like everything about him in that regard. But I'm not supremely confident. Like, I don't come into this race and say it's Blazing Sevens and everybody else. I'm still in my Countdown to the Crown, which will be published on Friday, where I separate them from not on my tickets to exotic contenders to win contenders. I'm still mixing and matching horses between the win contenders and the exotics column, Jeff. I really think there might be 4 or 5 horses who could win this race. Tuscan Gold, one of those. I thought he would be a better price. Obviously, everybody would have been a better price with Muth in the race. Now with Muth out, I mean, that's 38 points off the morning line when you take an 8-5 shot out. So you distribute that around 8 horses. That's another 4 or 5 points off of every horse in the race. And now you start to talk about a horse who was 6-1 is now maybe 9-2, somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, it's quite a difference, So I don't think we're going to get the value on him that I wanted to get in this race. So then you start to get a little bit tensed up of like, okay, I like him, but do I like him at 7-2, 4-1? I'm not quite sure what he's going to be price-wise. There does seem to be some wise guy swell, Not that the wise guy, we use that word. There seems to be some momentum amongst public handicappers for Tuscan Gold. If you call that wise guy, it's not inside information. It's just people, we're all looking for the alternative to the shorter price. And we all landed on the same horse. Whether or not that makes him a wise guy or not, there's no connotation behind that. But he may be an underlay. And if he's an underlay, I'm not going to be as financially involved if he's not the price that I want. I've got to get at least 6-1 on him to win this race. And I don't know that he's going to stay up at that kind of price.
No, I mean, I think, again, getting back to the wagering guide, if I'm not mistaken, I think 6 of the 20 picked him on top. So, I mean, we got some sharp guys on that guide. And I don't know if they would call them wise guys. They're good handicappers, and I think they think a lot like the public. So I don't think you're getting 6-1. But I tell you what, I mean, you feel the same about Tuscan Gold as I feel about Imagination. I expect him to run well. I expect him to have every chance, but I just don't know if he's got it here. I think he's going to run well, but I don't want him having to look anybody in the eye at the furlong pole. Whereas I think Mystic Dan will find something extra if he has to.
Right. Let's get another opinion on this race. You talked about some of the wise guys and gals that we have in the first Preakness wager guide. One of those, Eddie Olczyk, you'll get his picks. They are now live in the guide. And I talked with Eddie Olczyk last night about some different Preakness topics. One of those is, how do you see the race setting up? And we've got all these videos for you at YouTube if you want to check them out. But let's give you a shot here to listen in to a couple minutes with Edzo talking about how he thinks this race is going to shake out for Preakness 149. We are talking the 149th Preakness Stakes Saturday at Pimlico in Greater Baltimore. Eddie Olczyk joins us here on the program. Edzo, what do you see happening? How does this race shake out with the scratch and move? Things are a little bit different early and maybe late as well.
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you, Jeremy. I mean, I look at the speed of this race. At least I think the speed of the race is going to come from the outside, the other Bob Baffert, and I guess the only Bob Baffert now,
Right.
with Imagination on the outside. Really was a game second in the Santa Anita Derby, and I think the other speed in the race. I mean, call me crazy. I mean, I think it's going to be Dwayne Lucas's number 6, Seize the Gray. I know he's got 2 in there, and he's got the 7 Just Steel. I think being so close in that last race, going to Pad Day Mile, Jeremy, 22:44, 109, and the horse was no more than 2 lengths out of it at any time, and it eventually won. I actually like that horse. I picked that horse underneath. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come up with the gimmick, but the horse went off at a really nice 9-1. So I think the speed of the race, as far as I'm concerned, is the 6 horse Seize the Gray and the 9 Imagination. Where does the 8 Tuscan Goal kind of fit? Kind of fit into everything. Mystic Dan won't be too far off. So I think we're going to get a lively pace, even though Muth is out of it.
Right. And then do the closers have a shot in this one? You're looking at, Catching Freedom, horses like that from the back of the pack, and they make them run?
Yeah, that's my plan. At least that's what I'm thinking anyways. Now, I think that, I feel that Imagination will be hanging around. But I do believe I think the pace will be hot enough, and you're going to look for a horse that's maybe in that mid pack, or if they do go overly quick, maybe get a horse to pick them all up. So yes, I think that the pace will come back, kind of like it did in a Derby, so to speak, right? Like, I mean, Mystic Dan was sitting the perfect trip and got the trip up the rail and beat the closers home. So I think a very similar type of style on how this Preakness Stakes is going to run.
All right, we'll see how it shakes out on Saturday just after 7:00. All right, well, if Eddie's right, then you're in good shape, Jeff. It's going to play out just like the Derby did.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it'll certainly. I'll be watching for sure. I don't know if Mystic Dan is going to be a betting price for me, but I've got wagering strategies in the guide, which makes sense, I believe. And we'll see what happens and what the track's like. And that's another problem, because how much do you elevate Mystic Dan's chances if it does come up wet? I mean,
he goes to the top. I think it's fair to say. There's no question about it.
I would. He's a good moving colt and good athlete. It looks like, based on the video we saw, he's held his flesh well. He's eaten up. Some horses thrive coming back. Not every horse bounces after a hard race. And by the way, there's another thing I wanted to say. I didn't even think he had that hard of a race. It looked like he was life and death to him. But up until the top of the stretch, when he had gotten through, he was into the bridle. He had nowhere to go, so he couldn't pull. He couldn't make a premature move. He kind of sat. He really only ran from the quarter pole to the wire. And look who is coming at him. Those are 2 really, really good colts that were coming to him. They weren't some 50-1 shot. So, again, more appreciation for Mystic Dan than I had before the race and even after the race, as I look at the race closer, put it under the microscope, and realize this is a pretty good horse.
So it's Mystic Dan for Jeff. I'm going with Tuscan Gold, but they not a large level of confidence. On a 1 to 5 confidence, I'm about a 2.5. I'm going to use multiple horses in the multi-race bets in this particular race, and we'll see how it shakes out. Thankfully for me, there's a money back special with First Bet and Express Bet, at least up to my first $10 that I play on Tuscan Gold. You can get up to $10 back if your win bet finishes 2nd or 3rd in the Preakness Stakes and several other stakes races throughout the Friday and Saturday card. Be sure to check out the First Bet app in the promotions section, or the promotions section at expressbet.com on the desktop, and find out which races specifically all have the money back specials on them. But I believe it's the 5 races leading up to the Black Eyed Susan in a row, and the 5 races leading up to the Preakness Stakes in a row, with that money back special on Friday and Saturday. Be sure to check out the website, and always opt into the promotion so that you can take advantage of these great money back specials with First Bet and Express Bet. All right, Jeff Siegel, that wraps things up for this week. You and I get to enjoy the Preakness Stakes this weekend and then come back on Tuesday on our It's Official podcast to recap it all and take on 5 hot topics as we do each week. We want to thank folks watching within the First Preakness Wager Guide and those of you on YouTube and the social media channels that just check in around the Triple Crown. We want to invite you to join us each and every week. Jeff and I do 2 podcasts. On Tuesdays, we release the weekly It's Official recap show, and on Fridays, you get the First Call podcast with weekend stakes handicapping each and every week. Jeff, I'll give you the last word to take us out to Preakness 149.
Well, I hope everybody enjoys it. Part of me really wants Mystic Dan to win because that'll give him 2/3 of the Triple Crown and make the Belmont really special. It's always fun to have a Triple Crown at stake. And if he runs well and runs as well as I think he will, I think he can do it. Great undercard, good gambling opportunities, a lot of rolling exotics I'll be playing. Some races I can boil down, some races I'll spread. Maybe I get a price or 2 in there. So that'll be kind of fun. I hope the weather cooperates. I want it fair for everybody. But again, great racing. I'll have my analysis on the entire card for Express Bet. That'll be probably posted sometime Friday nights. If you wake up in the morning, it'll be there. And hopefully you can follow along, and everybody can make some money. So good luck. Looking forward to a great race, great day of racing Saturday at Old Hilltop.
We'll bid you farewell with another look back at Kentucky Derby 150, and can Mystic Dan do it again?
It is wide open. Catching Freedom's going to come through toward the inside. They're off the turn. Mystic Dan cut the corner and grabbed the lead right at the top of the stretch. Sierra Leone and Forever Young are shoulder to shoulder with a furlong to go, but they've got 2 lengths to make up on Mystic Dan, who's begging for the wire. Forever Young and Sierra Leone keep on coming. Sierra Leone, Forever Young, and Mystic Dan. A wild finish. Here's the wire. Photo finish. 3 noses on the wire. Mystic Dan, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young in an international thriller.